Trump is a racist. He became the most well-known proponent of birtherism. It's not just toward African Americans. He has done a it's nuanced, but he does a Charlie Chan stereotypical accent sometimes when he's quoting President Xi of China, okay? He called Judge Gonzalo Curiel. He said he couldn't do his job as a federal judge because he's Mexican. Trump has, we could spend the rest of the show listing off the race baiting and racist statements that he's made. But even if you grant that it's about the record, he still hasn't done more for black people than even his immediate predecessor. Unemployment went down by 5 percentage points during the Obama-Biden administration. Obama, I think I went over this last week, Obama settled a big lawsuit between black farmers and the agriculture department. Obama was Obama. He was someone who overwhelmingly black people looked up to and admired. You could go on and on and on down that list. It's not even close. Here's one of the reasons I'm bringing it around back to why I call the debate a tie. And I don't take issue if we say, oh, Biden won it on points, whatever. Democrats, including Biden, including Obama, constantly miss opportunities to point out the stuff that I just pointed out. Joe Biden was the vice president under Obama. Why doesn't he know to immediately come back with their record? Why can't he immediately come to the black unemployment rate during his own vice presidency? Why
the black poverty rate went down for the first time since 99.
Why, when Trump said, and this is almost a quote from last night, you guys didn't do anything while you were in office, why doesn't Biden immediately come back and say, we did the 2010 Fair Sentencing Act? And there's nothing wrong with even saying, look, we also like your First Step Act, but we were there first and we did the 2010 Fair Sentencing Act. And oh, by the way, our law implemented changes in sentencing. Your law is still not fully implemented, President Trump. That's why I deduct points from Vice President Biden and President Obama and Democrats in this. They don't brag about their accomplishments. The one exception last night, Vice President Biden, did a really excellent job of making the case for Obamacare and underscoring that President Trump doesn't have a health care plan. But otherwise, it is baffling to me why Democrats can't just say the good things on their record and then go, and yes, we did not do everything we set out to do because there were bumps in the road. It's mind-blowing.
Reese, you've spoken about this. You've talked about using social media, using memes. I've seen your videos. I've written articles about this. I mean, this is it is frustrating when they just don't have the bullet points. Boom, boom, boom. Even my breakdown of Lincoln, you can't get that in a debate. And if Biden would have said Lincoln was a racist too, folks would have lost their minds because Lincoln is a freaking religion. Lincoln's a freaking religion to people. Like, folks are still profiting off of this myth of Lincoln. But yeah, that is a frustrating angle to it. What do you think, Reese?
I completely agree that Democrats consistently leave points on the board. I think Biden left a lot of points on the board, particularly in the race section. I think that it's worth pointing out once again, but before I get to what's worth pointing out, I just want to say that to a certain degree, I do agree with you, David, on the fact that Trump did what he has to do by saying certain things, even if they aren't true. Because I read a polling of younger black people, black men in particular, and one of the comments that came out of this focus group was that, well, he says it so often that it must be true. And so there's a value of repeating even false claims that helps set the narrative. And I know, being on social media, I hear Trump's talking points being regurgitated by people. Oh, Obama did nothing for the blacks. Or, oh, Trump is doing all this for black people. He's done more for black people than any other president, and blah, blah, blah. All of these things are objectively false. And this is what I will go into my boom, boom, boom. Number one, black unemployment is now 13%. It's twice the rate of what it is for white people. Almost all of the gains that he touts that have been recovered from reopening the country have come from white job workers, not from black people. And the employment rate right now is double what he inherited from Obama. 41% of black businesses have closed down as a result of Trump's botched COVID response. 1 out of 920 Black people have died from COVID. As of September, it was 1 out of 1,000. Now it's 1 out of 920 as of October 13th. If that trend continues, and Biden did mention this in the last debate, if that trend continues, we're looking at 1 in 500 Black people dying from COVID. Almost every single child that has died from COVID is either Black and Latino. So these are the things that absolutely are worth mentioning. I just did it in 20 seconds, I believe. It's something that you could actually bring up. And this is something that, because there isn't enough pushback on it, and you have to make the case that these deaths weren't inevitable. That's another part of what you have to do. And I think that Biden did a good job for the most part, but I think when you talk about racial disparities, you have to explain it's not a personal responsibility thing. It's not that Black or Latino people are inferior or they're just more innately unhealthy. You have to break it down. I think Senator Kamala Harris does a great job of that. So he leaves points on the board. Trump's record is objectively bad with Black people, and the HBCU funding he likes to tout was something that was actually championed by Senator Kamala Harris, who's on the ticket. And so he always has all these mistruths, these half-truths, and Biden leaves points on the board when it comes to race. And I don't know if it's because there's just an assumption that Obama is like a god in the Black community, and so you don't have to really defend his record. But on the stage, I think he could have done more in that regard.
That's.
Hold on one second.
Real quick, Clay.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, David. No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, sorry. Look, I agree with you, Reese. And to your point, President Trump, one of the reasons he was able to be more restrained was because he rolled out a bunch of statements that were misleading and in some cases fact-free. Daniel Dale, the CNN fact-checker, said last night something like he was calmer, but he lied more than the last debate.
Yeah.
So
right.
I say this to agree with you, Reese, but to your point, right, if you're the Democrats, if you're debating, you can't just walk out there and say, well, everybody knows Obama was great, and so you don't defend his record. President Trump isn't sneaking up on anybody anymore. He's not, surprise candidate President Trump in a 17 Republican primary field like he was in 2015. He's the president of the United States. You've seen him now for 5 years. You've got to come with, if you're Biden, if you're Obama, if you're any Democrat, your responses to those misleading statements. If you don't, you're not doing your job as a politician. Sorry, Clay.
So I want to just remind people a little bit of something. Listen, is Biden's record, is it perfect? No, it's not. The crime reform bill, it had issues. I've talked about it ad nauseum, but you can't look at Biden just through that lens of the crime reform bill. You're not looking at the full story. Tell the full story of Biden. So I just want to take you back to 1986 when Biden ripped into Reagan's administration for embracing apartheid. And for folks that don't know, when Biden says Afrikaners are the white South Africans. So it's really important. A lot of folks don't know this, and I wish he would bring this up because Ronald Reagan, in the beginning at least, was horrendous when it came to apartheid. As black South Africans were being slaughtered by their government. Listen to Biden in 86.
First of all, it is the leaders of South Africa and their people, black and white, who have the majority responsibility. They must rise to it. Well, they are rising to it. They're rising to it. The only thing left available to them with that repulsive, repugnant regime of Afrikaners there. And it's the only way they have. They've tried everything for the last 20 years. They begged, they borrowed, they crawled, and now they're taking up arms. The second thing, progress toward peace requires a timetable. Timetable, elimination of apartheid. What's our timetable? What are we saying to that repugnant regime? These people are being crushed. And we're sitting here with the same kind of rhetoric. The same thing we heard.
Senator, let me say that I hate to hear a senator of the United States calling for violence.
I'm not calling for violence.
That's what you're doing.
I hate to hear
exactly what you're doing.
I hate to hear an administration and a Secretary of State refusing to act on a morally abhorrent point.
I mean, I don't know if you've heard that before, Reese and David, but tell the full story of Joe Biden. That's all that I'm saying. Go ahead, Reese.
Yeah, I mean, this is where I think that there's a lack of cultural competency for Joe Biden. I think he has the bona fides, as you just pointed out. He has a record. that he has a lot of things that he could emphasize that might be a lot more favorable for him. But it's 2020. People have a very short political memory. Even a lot of black people have a short political memory, as it seems. A lot of black people don't remember pre-Obamacare, where, pre-existing conditions meant you couldn't get health care, you got charged more on a number of things. And so I think that he doesn't really know exactly what to pinpoint on. He doesn't really know how to pivot when it comes to the race conversation. I don't think that he's ever been particularly strong in that. Where he's been strong is that he was vice president to a black man for 8 years, and so that has endeared him with the black community. I think that's where Senator Kamala Harris really picks up a lot of the slack in terms of the cultural competency and how to articulate things. But I think he does an adequate job, particularly when the competition is Trump. I think that Biden did a good job last night in articulating the fact that his daughter's a social worker. He doesn't have to have the talk with his daughter and things like that. So I think he understands racism. He understands that it's bad. He has a history of fighting against it. But I just don't think in 2020 he has the cultural lens to understand how to weave that seamlessly into a conversation. And to me, it seems like he's probably making a calculation. It's better to just kind of pivot away from it altogether or stick to this very narrow set of talking points that are probably poll tested for not turning off the white voters in Michigan and Pennsylvania and Ohio and the steel workers, but also kind of hitting the right notes with the black people that 85% of black people that are going to support him.